Welcome back to Transcriber from Reddit. Today's topic comes from the subreddit defeat_project_2025, posted by user jpress, spelled with 4 S's. As of recording, this was posted 4 days ago. Now, reason I'm covering this is because this has to do with women's reproductive health. I haven't covered Project 2025 before on my channel, mostly because my channel deals with a lot of transcription as well as religious abuses, mostly focusing on WELS and LCMS abuses. When I heard about Project 2025 being released, I started reading up on it, and what struck me was the Christian nationalism that was very much present in every single page. Now, I grew up in Christian nationalism, different sorts of Christian nationalism intersecting, if you will. A lot of the Christian scandals, especially the Christian sex scandals that have been taking place and that have been appearing in the news the last 4 to 5 years, those involved people that I knew, not very well, I will admit, but I knew of them. Like, their names were huge in the circles that I came from. And one thing that taught me about all those abuses being made public is that Christians are really bad at dealing with their own. And if Project 2025 were to ever come to pass, Christians will be, and will continue to be, bad at dealing with problems within their own circles, but then it'll be a nationwide epidemic, not just on the local scale. Moving on from my personal thoughts on Project 2025. Again, I am transcribing this because of the focus on women's reproductive issues. This post is a text post with multiple links. The title reads, "When someone says, quote, 'it'll never happen,' end quote, show them these places where Project 2025 is becoming a reality." The text post reads as follows. Project 2025 is already a reality in many states. Below that is a link to AmericanProgress.org article about Project 2025 being a reality by Ryan Koronowski. Quote, "The Project 2025 agenda is already taking root in many states, such as Texas, Florida, Idaho, Missouri, and more, taking freedom away from individuals and giving more to corporations, ripping reproductive rights away from women, endangering worker safety, outlawing local living wage minimums, or the ability for businesses to voluntarily recognize unions, centralizing power away from the people, fomenting retributive political violence, prosecuting librarians over books radical extremists have deemed obscene or dangerous. This is the future the extreme far right wants for all Americans, and it has already succeeded in making it a reality for many." End quote. Here's just one set. Those 2 words are in all caps. One set of bullet points from the piece, the repro rights ones. Dig deeper for many more issues and proof points. Quote, "Since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, several states have imposed extreme abortion bans." First point, North Dakota implemented a 6-week ban with essentially no exceptions. Linked here. Point 2, Idaho's extreme abortion laws encourage the family members of rapists to sue doctors who have performed an abortion on the rapist's victim. Point 3, West Virginia put in place a ban at all stages of pregnancy with minimal exceptions. Point 4. Under Mississippi's extreme ban, care options are so difficult to obtain, and information on the nearly insurmountable obstacles women and girls have to bypass in order to access care is so murky that a 13-year-old had to give birth to her rapist baby. Linked here. Point 5. A Missouri state senator attempted to punish women who had abortions and keep them from accessing Medicaid for any type of health care, despite the fact that Medicaid already cannot be used to obtain an abortion. Linked here. Finally, point 6. Proposed legislation in several states would bring homicide charges against anyone performing an abortion. Linked here. As of recording, this post has 824 upvotes and 26 comments. Instead of reading the comments, I am going to direct your attention over to a link that I think should be more heavily featured in this, especially for those of us who ideally want, especially for those of us who come from extremely pro-life backgrounds. Now, remember the Texas mother, the Kate Cox situation? I don't think that's featured enough. And here's why. Continue to care for my loved ones. Will my loved ones be able to continue to care for me, or will they be crushed under the weight of the medical debt? And that's not even going into when, after the baby's born, if it's even possible for the mother to continue to work, let alone for the father to continue to work at his job, and if they need to hire any outside help, which, if you are a family of any size and making under, let's just say, $100,000, if you make under $100,000, you probably don't make enough to actually sustain yourselves and pay for any kind of outside care, whether that's daycare or a nanny or anything like that. So as sad as it is, it appeared that, as sad as it was, that the mother, Kate Cox, had to abort her child. Let's remind ourselves what Texas did in that situation. From CBSNews.com. Title, Texas Mother Kate Cox on the Outcome of Her Legal Fight for an Abortion. Quote, "It was crushing," end quote. Written by Tracy Smith, January 14th, 2024. Now we scroll down and there's a couple of videos here. I'm getting to the article right away. Lifelong Texans Kate and Justin Cox were already parents to a young girl and boy when they found out last August that Kate was pregnant again. Quote, "We have the 2 children that we absolutely adore. And yeah, the thought of having a third one added to the family was incredible," end quote, Justin said. But a series of tests revealed the baby they were expecting, a girl, had trisomy 18, linked here, a genetic condition that causes severe developmental problems. According to a 2016 study, 9 out of 10 infants won't survive more than a year, linked here. And for Kate and Justin's baby, the prognosis was even more grim. Side note, at least one condition is already met here: quality of life for the baby. Likelihood of the baby surviving, probably not going to be more than a year. That's going to be a lot of medical bills for the family. I continue reading. Kate said, quote, "We asked, quote, how long could we have with our baby, best case scenario, end quote. And she said she thought maybe a week, ... If she survived the pregnancy and the birth, that it might be a week. And what that would mean as far as, I didn't want to watch her suffer. That would be very hard. She would have had to be placed directly onto hospice. There's no treatment that can be done." End overall quote. Smith asked, quote, "Did you think your health, your life would be threatened if you went through with the birth?" End quote. Quote, "Yes," end quote, Kate replied. Quote, "We know a lot of the trisomy 18 babies don't survive birth, so I could lose her at any point in the pregnancy. There's risk of infection, risk of uterine rupture, and we want more children as well. So what does that mean for future pregnancies?" End quote. Side note, 2 more conditions are also fulfilled here. Life and health of the mother, because uterine rupture means that you could lose the life of the mother, as well as the possibility of her having any chance at having future kids. So again, life and health of the mother, second one, and third one, potential pregnancies / fertility could be affected. So all in all, 3 conditions fulfilled for most pro-lifers for an abortion exception. I continue reading past the photo of Kate and Justin Cox sitting down as they're being interviewed by the person who wrote the article. The Coxes wanted to get an abortion, but in Texas, abortion is illegal. So Kate contacted the Center for Reproductive Rights and attorney Molly Duane. Quote, "She made it very clear that this is where her home was," end quote, Duane said. Quote, "She needed and wanted an abortion, and she wanted to be able to access it in her home community," end quote. Kate said, quote, "I wanted to be here, close to home. I mean, it's the hardest thing I've been through. I wanted to come home, cry on my own pillow, hold my babies, be near my doctors. So I was really hopeful. That's really what I thought about most going into this," end quote. Smith asked, quote, "Some of the people on this other side of the issue say, quote, why not just have the baby naturally, and whatever happens, happens," end quote, end overall quote. Quote, "I want more babies," end quote, Kate replied. Quote, "I talked with our doctors, and I didn't want her to suffer. I felt it was best for her, and I felt it was best for our family as well. We want to be able to have more babies. We want to give siblings to our kids," end quote. Since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022, linked here, 14 states, parentheses, including Texas, end parentheses, have broadly banned abortion. The Texas law says there are exceptions for a, quote, life-threatening physical condition, ... or a serious risk of substantial impairment of a major bodily function, end quote. Here there's 2 linked sub-notes below. One saying, "A year after Dobbs v. Jackson, majority of Americans not happy with abortion restrictions." And the second one, "CBS News poll finds most say Roe's overturn has been bad for the country. Half say abortion has been more restricted than expected." Again, both linked here. Below that, we see an infographic that says at the top, "States that completely banned abortions." The infographic contains a full map of all of the states of the United States. Of note, in the infographic, highlighted in red are the states that completely banned abortions. Texas is one of them. So is North Dakota, South Dakota, Idaho, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia. I continue reading. Duane believed Kate's case fell under that exception. Quote, yes, and so did her doctor. The problem is, no one knows what that means. Means is in italics. Major bodily function? What about a minor bodily function? Surely fertility would count as a major bodily function, but there's no clarity about this, end quote. Side note. When she says there's no clarity about this, she's directly referring to the law and how law defines and the legal definitions behind major and minor bodily functions. In the case of women's fertility and abortions, they are not clearly set into law, which means that it's a legal gray area. Now, again, going back to what we read earlier, Texas, by all reasonable belief, should be allowing this abortion because of life and health of the mother, to protect it, protecting the future fertility of the mother, which is what most pro-lifers are also concerned about, and keeping the baby from suffering and dying and suffering needlessly. I believe that's also a third one and should definitely be considered. But at the very least, for the state of Texas, they consider two of them, life and health of the mother and future fertility. But did Texas follow through on that? Did Texas actually grant this mother an abortion under what it recognized as its own exemptions? I continue reading. In 2021, the year before the bans, there were more than 50,000 abortions performed in Texas. Last year, there were just 40. The penalties Texas doctors face for performing an abortion are high. Fines of at least $100,000 and up to 99 years in prison. And there's more. Quote, anyone who provides an abortion or aids or abets in the provision of an abortion is potentially liable for at least a $10,000 fine that can be filed by anyone in the world, end quote, Duane said. Quote, so if Justin drove Kate to the doctor's office for the abortion procedure, then he has, quote, aided or abetted, end quote. And overall, quote. Quote, he could be liable for $10,000, end quote, asked Smith. Quote, at least $10,000, correct, end quote. Here there's another subnote saying, Texas abortion ban turns citizens into, quote, bounty hunters, end quote, linked here. Side note, again, going back to the Texas state's supposed exemption, even granting that the mother has the ability to get the abortion under Texas's exemption, there is that potential of her husband being liable, which, if the mother falls under the exemption, in an ideal world, the father would not get fined for it. However, as we can see here, the wording is so gray that it is possible, even if the mother got the exemption, that the father would still get fined for it. And that's not right. I continue reading. So far, no private citizen has successfully sued another for aiding an abortion, but the Coxes and their doctor didn't want to risk prosecution. So in December, when Kate was 20 weeks pregnant, they sued the state of Texas, linked here. Quote, we are asking for a court order to say Kate can get an abortion in Texas, and her doctor and her husband would be protected by that court order, end quote, Duane said. The district court granted the restraining order, linked here, but the Texas Attorney General sent a letter to doctors and hospitals warning they could still be prosecuted if they helped Kate get an abortion, linked here. And he filed an appeal with the state Supreme Court. Smith asked, quote, as the Texas Supreme Court is debating this, what are you going through, end quote. Quote, I mean, I didn't hardly get out of bed. Stressed, you know. I had a timeline. I couldn't wait, end quote, Kate said. Side note, as we can see here, the district court was about to legally grant it. However, another politician, as we saw here, could violate that legal exemption for the mother and scare all the doctors and hospitals into complying against that exemption for the mother. That is also not right. If there is an exemption, the exemption must be followed. As for filing an appeal with the state Supreme Court, legally, that is correct, and that's what he should have did. However, in this case where the mother's life and the health and the safety of the baby and the mother and the fertility is at risk, that means that months of legal process could occur, which would jeopardize the safety of both mother and baby. And doing so meant that the politician was okay with taking that risk, which means that the exemption that is legally set in law apparently has no meaning when there are no politicians and no courts that are able to enforce that exemption, which unfortunately means that law like Roe v. Wade that was done at the Supreme Court level and that was enacted for all 50 states has to come back. When individual states are able to jeopardize their own people and the health and safety of their own people and violate the exemptions that they're supposed to have in place in order to power play or to get political points, that means that the health and safety of that person is no longer able to be safely held in respect to state laws, which means there must be a federal protection in place. I continue reading. They decided they had to go out of state. The Coxes had the abortion in New Mexico and said goodbye to a future they'd already been grieving. Quote, her name's Chloe, end quote, Kate said. Quote, why did you feel it was important to give her a name? End quote, Smith asked. Quote, I gave her a name because she'll always be my baby, end quote, Kate replied. Quote, her middle name is my grandfather's name so that she knew who to look for in heaven, end quote. On December 11th, while the Coxes were away, the Texas Supreme Court overturned the lower court's ruling. Subnote, Texas Supreme Court rules against woman seeking emergency abortion after she leaves state for procedure. Linked here. Dwayne said the court decided that, quote, essentially Kate wasn't sick enough. And I think what that makes clear to me, and the fact that the Attorney General fought it as hard as he did, is that the exception in Texas doesn't exist at all, end quote. Smith asked Kate what she thought. Here it says, though, I believe the writer meant thought, when she heard their ruling. Quote, it was crushing, end quote, said Kate. Quote, I was shocked that the state of Texas wanted me to continue a pregnancy where I would have to wait until a baby dies in my belly or dies at birth or lives for days and puts my own health at risk. Put my own health at risk and a future pregnancy at risk, end quote. CBS News reached out to the Texas Attorney General and received no reply. The Coxes received hundreds of letters of support, but Kate stayed away from social media, where people on both sides weighed in, including former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum. In the middle of the debate,
he posted a picture online of his daughter, who has trisomy 18 and is a teenager. Smith asked, quote, "Did you think there was any chance that your baby could have survived?" End quote. Justin replied, quote, "You can't simply say, quote, my child has trisomy 18, so yours would have ended up like this," end quote. I think that's a little ridiculous. Every case is different, and ours was extremely, extremely bleak. It was as severe as it gets, basically. End overall quote. The Coxes say the holidays with their family gave them some time to get back to normal, and they'll soon try to have another baby. Molly Duane has another abortion case in front of the Texas Supreme Court, and she says she's hopeful. Smith asked, quote, "Ultimately, Kate Cox didn't prevail. She lost, but did she make a difference?" End quote. Quote, "She absolutely made a difference," end quote, Duane replied. Quote, "She got the health care that she needed. She got an abortion. But in terms of the big picture, she brought people along on this journey with her, and she helped people understand the true human toll that abortion bans take on families." End quote. Smith asked Kate, quote, "If you could do it all over again, would you do this again? Would you go through with the lawsuit again?" End quote. Quote, "I would," end quote, said Kate. Quote, "I've gotten to hear a lot of stories, for other women, and I have a daughter. I hope the law will be different one day. So if I had to do it over, I would." End quote. At the bottom of this are links for more info for the Center for Reproductive Rights and attorney Molly Duane. I ask all my listeners to think of this. Regardless of where you personally fall on the spectrum, think of how, legally speaking, Texas fell in regard to Kate Cox's abortion and where they should have fallen in regards to the exception and how they chose to not do so. Think about, legally speaking, about all of the legally gray terms out there regarding medical conditions like this, and how those will probably not be and never be addressed. And think about how, if Project 2025 were to come to pass, how much more likely all of that is going to happen, and how many more stories like Kate Cox's will happen. If Texas was supposed to have exceptions in order to preserve the life of a mother like Kate Cox, and those exceptions ultimately proved meaningless because even a woman in Kate Cox's position did not mean much to them, and her life did not matter to them, then ultimately it does not matter what legal protections there are in the law if there are people out there who are not willing to enforce them. That is not Kate Cox's fault. That is the law's fault. And if the law and the people who write the law into being cannot change the law and will not change the law, then people need to be voted in who can do that, or at least can kickstart it to change. And things like Project 2025 will only help rewrite the law back centuries and hurt these women like Kate Cox and continue to hurt them even more. The law already is very gray when it comes to reproductive health and for women's bodies. And that's just on the subject of thinking about abortions. That's not even thinking about if women want to get sterilized or if they have to medically get sterilized. That's not looking at cases like endometriosis or other conditions that harm women's bodies to the point where they can't have kids. There are no legal exceptions for this, and any legal exceptions that were purported to be in cases of this are apparently meaningless for people who want to make a point. There is no kindness or compassion in these people who are administering these laws. And if that's the case, then maybe in order to protect the most vulnerable, the laws have to be changed. Thank you for watching/listening, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.